Okay, we will wait for a few minutes so that others also join the program. Let's wait for 2 to 3 minutes, and then we'll start discussing about the the this year's issues. So mainly a lot of development with respect to the economic issues. We will discuss a lot of issues, a lot of economic issues, in fact. So the first thing that we discuss in the class, if anybody has a doubt with respect to the last week discussion, you can raise your question. So that is the first thing. If you don't have any doubt, in that case, we'll start our program. So let us start the discussion, and I believe others will join the program as we progress. So let us start our program, and the first thing we are going to discuss today is about the issues that we were already tracking. So there was issue with respect to the Deposit Insurance and Credit Guarantee Corporation. In fact, there was a bill uh, that was passed by the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, by the Parliament, and this bill is basically about the Deposit Insurance and Credit Guarantee Corporation. Okay, so DICGC bill. We have already discussed about the DICGC because this is the development with respect to the last class discussion as well. So we have basically discussed about what is DICGC and how it operates. Now, there is one thing the question is asked about, that do Indians need insurance for bank deposit? So the current bill is basically enhancing the insurance cover for the deposits that is made by the people, and under this 98% bank deposits are covered in India. So in light of that, let us discuss about that what are the issues with this. So revamped deposit insurance scheme has been launched, and for that Deposit Insurance and Credit Corporation Amendment Bill was passed by the Parliament recently. And this bill guarantees for the compensation up to limit of 5 lakh rupees. So the a guarantee is provided to the depositors for their money in the bank. Okay, and that deposit and that compensation will be provided within a period of 90 days. We will talk about the various key provisions of the bill, and try to understand that what the bill is asking about. So if you look at the recent problems, there are a lot of problems that have occurred in the cooperative banks, and the cooperative banks were unable to pay the amount to the people. And especially if you look at non-banking financial companies also, so there are a lot of default that has come up, especially in the cooperative banks. So in light of that, it was essential for the government to ensure a sort of trust to the people and ensure that the banking system is still working properly. There is a need to provide that insurance scheme to the depositors. So in light of that, it has been provided. Now, what are the key provisions of the bill? We need to discuss about this. So the key features of the bill is the first thing, the interim payment to be made by the DICGC to the depositors in those banks for whom any restriction or moratorium have been imposed by RBI. Okay, so under the Banking Regulation Act 1949, so under the Banking Regulation Act, if any restrictions have been put forth by the government, by the RBI on any cooperative bank or any bank which are basically in the zone of or which have been uh, defaulting the payment to the people, in that case the money will be provided by the Deposit Insurance and Credit Corporation to those banks. Now depositors will be able to access their own money in 90 days. Okay, so there is a provision that the depositors will not have to wait for the 6 months or there is any sort of insecurity happens in that case. So in order to avoid any sort of insecurity with respect to the money of the people, so there is a one guarantee provided that for a maximum period of within a maximum period of 90 days, the interim payment will be done to the people. Provisions to cover existing cases where banks are already under restrictions that has been ensured. It enables timely repayment to DICG as a DICGC and expedites recoveries. So here it is emphasizing that the banks are required to make payment or required to ensure the depositors money, and for that they will have to make payment to the DICGS. So therefore there will be a timely repayment to DICGC. It also enables a ceiling on premium which is to be notified by the DICGC with the prior approval of RBI. Okay. With the passing of this bill, the deposit insurance coverage in India goes up to 98.3%. Okay. And that is something which you can see ensures a healthy banking system. It ensures that the people get trust into the system. And this is the reason why it has been done. Now, there is a question asked about under the scheme that the insurance coverage or insurance is insurance limit has been increased to 5 lakh rupees. Now, why there is a need to raise the value of the deposits? So the first thing that it was introduced in 1990s, and 1990 was the limit was 1 lakh rupees. We have already we have already seen the progress in last 30 years. So there has been 30 years since the limit was imposed 1 lakh rupees. Therefore, it is essential to meet the current requirement. We need to increase the limit up to 5 lakh rupees. The second important thing is that in the last 30 years, we have seen huge rise of inflation, and at least there is a increase in the price of the commodities, goods, and services. So in light of that, there is a need to increase the depositors' money or increase the deposits. When it comes to comparing with international standards, even we are very, very low when it comes to our insurance, depositors insurance, or you can say insurance of the depositors money, that is very low against the international standards. I'm not talking about the US and UK. In US and UK, they have we are far lower than them. But even the like or level, the same level of economies, for example, Mexico, Brazil. So if we compare with the same kind of economies, we will still not be able to perform. We are still lagging behind in terms of international standards. And it is largely because, if you look at, it is said that it is not a wise thing to compare ourselves when it comes to only the you know uh, only in isolation or only in terms of money. But then there is also one thing, that is a purchasing power. So we cannot come we need to compare in terms of purchasing power of the individual as well. So in light of that, we have raised the value of the deposits. So last time we talked about that the value has been increased to 5 lakh rupees. Now the depositors money has insurance of up to 5 lakh rupees. So why it has been raised, that is one question. Now, overall, if you look at that, why do we need insurance for bank deposits? So you can expect, as I said to you, you can expect this kind of question. One, why do we need to have such deposits, insurance against such deposits? And the one thing about the DICGC. So I've already talked about DICGC. So therefore, I would not unnecessarily talk about it now, because if you want to know, you please go through the last video. You will see that we have already discussed about the functionality of the DICGC. Now, why insurance is done? The one thing that it is in the banking sector, you will see some similar kind of statement. For example, it is done in order to stabilize the banking system. Of late, the banking system has seen a lot of problem because of the failure of the cooperative banks. And more importantly, you will see it is not the scheduled bank which are facing challenges. Okay, and not in the scheduled banks, there are many challenges when it comes to the regulation, because RBI maintains the regulation and it is able to make corrective action. In fact, we have seen that the prompt corrective action is taken by the RBI in order to ensure that no such situation occurs in the banking system. But the cooperatives are not directly under the RBI, and this is the reason we have seen a lot of failures of the cooperative banks. So in order to stabilize the banking system, it has been ensured that the depositors money must be insured. Depositors money do not get get wasted or do not get unutilized by various other uh, resources. So here you need to understand that we have legal reserve ratio. So legal reserve ratio, under the provision of legal reserve ratio, we maintain the provision of SLR and CRR with the scheduled banks. So therefore, the scheduled banks are not necessarily face the default kind of situation, but the cooperative banks are not required to maintain, especially if I talk about the primary cooperative banks or the rural cooperative banks. Therefore, they are not directly under the regulation of RBI, not following SLR CRR norms. As a result, you can see the impact of it can be seen in the form of insecurity of the depositors' money. So to stabilize the banking system and to ensure that the depositors' money remain in safe hand, it is important that such insurance is done. The second thing, as we have already answered, that this was introduced and this was enhanced largely to deal with the bank failures, so that the bank do not get failed, and as a result the depositors money do not get wasted in the process. So therefore, in order to deal with the bank failures, it is important to insure their money. It is also used, and this is done as a confidence building measures among the people, that their money are safe in the banks. So therefore, they must continue deposit the money in the bank. Okay. If such confidence building measures are not adopted, in that case, the banking system, as we have already discussed about, that the banking system is extremely important in order to ensure the saving habits among the people, and which results into the higher loan sanction to the people, and there is a direct relation with the investment. Okay, so in order to ensure that the saving gets properly and people have a tendency or habit of savings, which in turn increases the investment in the economy, it is important for us to ensure that such such uh, such policies are adopted. Jaswant, which one you are asking about to stabilize the banking system? Okay, so stabilizing the banking system means there are many banks, which many cooperative banks, which are not able to function properly, and as a result, it destabilize the banking system. Okay, because the people have no trust, and as a result, the money is not going into the banking system, and that may affect the entire banking system. So therefore, in order to stabilize the banking system, that the money remains, the people's money remains safe, that is why it has been done. Okay, so they need to ensure, there is a need to provide one thing, that the money remains the safe. With scheduled banks, there is a provision of LRR, that is legal reserve ratio. Okay, so therefore the money of the people are safe. Okay, they don't have any problem. But when it comes to the cooperative banks, they are not following legal reserve ratio. So therefore now there is a need to ensure that the people's money are safe, or insured. The fourth statement is to minimize the cost of delayed payment. Minimize, I mean, here it is saying minimize the tenure. Okay, so earlier what used to happen, when the banks get default, in that case there is a panic among the people, and they rush to the banks, and when they rush to the banks, they immediately want to withdraw money from them, and this creates huge pressure on the banks, or the defaulted banks, and in fact problem again gets aggravated in this process. Okay, so in order to deal with such issues, okay, and sometimes it happens that one who has got the money, but the banks have not enough money, so therefore there is a delay in payment to the people, okay, or to the depositors here. Now, what it is asking about, that every bank will require to make payment, or required to make insurance of their depositors' money. And when the insurance is done, the insurance agency will deliver the money within 90 days. So it is again, the things will be provided in 90 days. So there is a less panic. There will be less panic among the individual. Right? This is the reason why it was introduced into the system. So this is purely in terms of prelims examination point of view. I don't expect such question to be asked in mains examination. So as part of this, you need to understand 2 to 3 things. One is the key provisions of the bill. You can surely expect one question either from the bill, or from the institution, that is Deposit Insurance and Credit Guarantee Corporation. So from the institution, either one question in the next year you can expect about the Deposit Insurance and Credit Guarantee Corporation, or from the bill, or what are the benefits it is going to provide, or why do we need to ensure the bank deposits. So you can expect question in the prelims examination. There are 3 types of question you can expect. All right, and we have discussed every angle to it. You cannot expect this question and should not expect this question in the mains examination. All right. So this is what we have discussed. All right. Any problem with respect to the first discussion? Okay. Now let us move on to the next topic. The next topic is again an interesting topic, and the interesting is about the looming crisis in state finances. Now, if you look at the state finances, they have faced huge problem recently. These are again, we need to understand in very brief. So I'm just going to talk about the status of state finances, the current status of state finances. Okay. Now, there is one article and Cam, and this article is talking about the status of in state finances. Okay. Now, states were already under pressure due to pandemic. They were under pressure largely because there was a revenue shortfall. There was a revenue shortfall, and revenue shortfall largely because the GST, okay, they were the GST compensation were not provided by the center as they needed to be. The second important thing is that the revenue shortfall they face largely because of lack of economic activities or lack of economic activities, because once the economic activities will occur, only then they will earn something, and the revenue will increase. But the revenue shortfall happened largely because of a lack of economic activity, and GST compensation were not adequate. And at the same time, on the other hand, they needed to enhance the expenditure in order to meet the requirement of the people. Okay, so or for the welfare measures, and as a result there is a huge mismatch between the revenue and expenditure, and it resulted into the fiscal deficit. It resulted into higher fiscal deficit. It resulted into fiscal deficit of the state. Okay, now we have already understood it in the terms of central government, and the similar kind of things you will see with the state government also. So just look at the figure, and the figure suggests, if you look at the here, okay, so we are going to discuss about the revenue path. So total revenue, when I talk about, I'm talking about all the states. Okay, so if you look at 2020, 21, 22, so the budget has estimated close to 35 lakh crore rupees of revenue. Okay, so if you look at the performance of the revenue from 2019, 20, 21, 22, so all the data related to 21, 22 is still not available. All the data related to 2020, 21 is still not available. So data, that is actual data of the last year, will be made available in this year's budget. Okay, in this year's budget you will see the actual data, whereas this year's data, that revised will be available in the budget, but then actual will be available in the next year. So let us see, let us look at the pressure that these agencies are facing, or the state government has faced so far. So if you look at here, you see when it comes to the total revenue of the state in 2000, 1920, there is not huge growth compared to 2018-19, the actual figure. Now, the budget figure was higher. The budget figure this year is also higher, but then the actual figure is lower. Okay. So that is the growth of the revenue path in the last few years of the state. Now, there is a rising trend. So consolidated gross fiscal deficit of the state is continuously rising, which is something which is indicating that there is a problem when it comes to the resources or finances of the state government. Okay. Here, if you look at the state government, the fiscal deficit is rising. Okay, so Jaswant, the actual figure will not be available because we are already in the year. Okay, so the year will be completed by when? The financial year 2021, 21-22 will get completed by the end of March. Okay, 31st March. So therefore, you don't get the actual figure. Okay, so the new year will start from. So next year will start from 21, 20 22, 23. But for this year, the actual figure is not available, largely because of the fact that we have not yet ended the year. Regarding the financial year 2020-21, yes, of course, the actual figure of this will be made available in the budget. Okay, in the budget, the actual figure of this will be made available, whereas the revised budget will also be made available in the budget, but the actual figure for this year will not be available, largely because of the fact that the financial year will end in March 31 only. Okay, so therefore it is not available. Okay, so we were talking about the rising trend. If you look at the trend, especially in the year, and it is on the basis of revised. Okay, so in the year, that is a pandemic year. This is the pandemic year. Now, pandemic year, you can see there is a sharp rise. There is a sharp rise in the fiscal deficit of the state. So cumulative, the consolidated gross fiscal deficit of the states. Absolutely. This is the reason why we are talking about the financial year. Okay, so the question can be asked about that the financial year in the financial year 2021. Okay, and this question, the very concept can be asked about the actual figures. Actual figures of 2021-22 will be made available in which of the following budget year? The question can be asked like this one also, because this is a conceptual issue. Okay, so the question can be asked like this one also. Got that point? A direct question or indirectly also? Because there is always reference when we talk about the economy and the budget. You always need to talk in the context of financial year. How would you understand that the economy is growing? Economy is growing compared to some year. Okay, so it is a comparison. So therefore, the financial year's perspective is extremely important. Okay, now here, just try to understand how the pattern goes. Okay, remember, the data is not very important for you. What is important for you is to understand the pattern. Okay, so if the question, for example, I'm asking this, a statement is made. Okay, which of the following statement is correct? Consider the following statement, and one statement is written that there is a continuous downing of the gross fiscal deficit of the state in the last 10 years. The question can be asked like, there is a continuous deceleration or there is a continuous declining in the consolidated gross fiscal deficit of state in the last 5 years. So this question can be asked, but if you know this particular chart, and if you remember this particular chart, this will clearly tell you no, it is not like that. So therefore you will see, if you look at the year, that from year 2012 to 17, and this is showing the average, and 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, you can see the gross fiscal deficit is more or less same. There is not much increase, or there is not much sharp increase when it comes to the gross fiscal deficit, but there is a sharp increase in the gross fiscal deficit in the year 2020-21. Okay, even though it is a revised estimate, so it's not actual figure, but at least it shows that there is a huge rise in the fiscal deficit. Now, there can be many concerns with this. First, of course, it is the pandemic year. The problem can be that the one thing that can be done, that this, since it is a financial year, since it is a pandemic year, so therefore the escape clause can be invoked, and it has been invoked. It's understandable, but there is a fear among the experts that, you know, it should not become a norm for the state, because the state has a tendency, especially if you look at, there are various states which are engaged in following the populist policies, and as a result they become habitual for spending the money, and therefore they fear that if the fiscal deficit continue to get continuously get increased, in that case it will cause problem for the center as well. All right, so that can be the cause, but remember, these are the trends that we need to understand. So there is a sharp uptrend in the fiscal deficit for the year 2020-21. Now, adding states, when you think about the tax revenue of the states, so of course it has shown that the revised estimates, if you look at the budget 2020-21, in this year you can see that revised estimate has also been gone down, and when the actual figure will give, you can surely understand there will be sharp downtrend in the actual revenue of the state. Okay, because there was a fall for the revenue of the state. So these three figures are showing the current status of the state. So it is not about the one state or two state. This is a consolidated figure of all the states. So what it shows that on the one hand, the expenditure pressure is continuously rising. On the other hand, the tax revenue is continuously going down. As a result, there is a huge gap in the deficit. So fiscal deficit of the state is continuously rising. But how long this fiscal deficit will continue, that is something we need to watch. Okay, so that is the current status, and in fact there is no major difference when it comes to the performance of the states. If you see, okay, it is more or less in tandem with the state, in tandem with the central government, especially for this year. Okay. Now this the same thing which I told you has been written in terms of the words. So the tax revenue estimates, the tax revenue, the one of the important factor that has been attributed is the fall in vertical devolution. So the devolution which is done by the center to the state, there is a fall largely because of the less revenue collected by the central government also. So therefore, this vertical devolution of the finances also get reduced. The transfer done to the state was also reduced in the pandemic year. That's why they face the huge problem. Now, the vertical devolution is done on the recommendation of the Finance Commission. And as I said, effect of GST regime, you can see. And there is one thing, there was an increase in the grant in aid by the central government. So central government grants in aid from 5.35 lakh it increased to 7.48 lakh crore rupees. That is something which has helped the state to recover a bit. Okay, that is something positive for the state. But when it comes to the overall tax status of the state, it has continuously reduced. So that is what you can understand the status of the GST. Now, how the state has managed the situation? Okay, they have compensation through back-to-back loans, and that is where the fiscal deficit has increased. They resorted because they were not getting enough money from the from the central government, because the vertical devolution gets reduced. Therefore, the loan, they resorted to loan. However, the central government gives guarantee against those loan. Okay, so remember, when the state government raise loan from international market or local market, the central government provides guarantee for raising such loans. Compensation through grants has increased. Large tax concession were offered to the corporate sector, and that resulted into reviving investment, and therefore you can see there is some sort of positive in the sense. So these are the method that were resorted by the states in order to ensure that they can manage their you know their finances. So this is about the finances. What is more important in this one, we need to understand the trend in the state performance in uh, various factors. Okay, so whether it is in terms of total revenue, whether it is a fiscal deficit or the tax revenue. Okay, so even when it comes to the tax revenue, the question can be asked that there is a continuous rising of tax revenue of the state even before pandemic. Just look at this. Let's say this is a pandemic year. It is understandable that the tax revenue of the states will decrease. This is surely going to happen. But look at the year 2018 and 1819 and 1920. There was no pandemic. It was a normal year, but you see there is again the state collected less tax revenue. Okay, state collected less tax revenue compared to the year 2018-19. It also suggests that tax base is very low in the states. So that is something, a worrying trend in the state. This is not something which can encourage any central government, because currently the government is looking to get broader tax base, broader tax coverage, and the more tax revenue. But if it is not happening, then it's a worrying situation in the state, and that is what it is. It needed to augment. So this is about the performance of the state. All right, now there is another issue, and this is something which is very important. There was an article published in the Hindu, and this article is talking about looking beyond the Forest Rights Act. Okay, the Forest Rights Act was introduced in the year 2006. Now we have implemented the Forest Rights Act, but the particular article is talking about that we need to move from the Forest Rights Act in order to better implementation, in order to ensure that the people get adequate right under this one, in order to ensure that the livelihood of the people is ensured in the forest areas. Okay, so in that light, that particular article was published, and the article emphasizing on going beyond the provisions of the Forest Rights Act. So what we will do in this article, we will try to understand the Forest Rights Act, what are the implementation, where the gap is, and what we need to do. Okay, this is something, this is a kind of question you can expect in mains examination. So from mains point of view, This is significant. Okay, so let us try to understand the Forest Right Act. The Forest Right Act. Okay, so the Forest Right Act has been in existence for 15 years across India in vulnerable condition due to improper implementation of the Forest Right Act. So Forest Right Act was implemented. It came in 2006. Now we have entered into 2021. So we have completed a 15 years of Forest Right Act. But then even today, there are a lot of problems when it comes to the forest implementation of the Forest Act provisions. So therefore, this article is hinting towards that. Now, what is Forest Right Act? Okay, so Forest Right Act, the Scheduled Tribe and the other Traditional Forest Dweller Act was passed in 2021. This is known as Scheduled Tribe and other Traditional Forest Dweller Recognition of Forest Right Act, and this act was passed in 2006. This act aims to restore the rights of the forest dwellers over land. You need to know the background of this, that when the Forest Act was the first Forest Act was implemented in 1865 under the British regime, they 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 annexed their region and they displaced the individuals and they negated the right of the forest dwellers. Now, the forest dwellers were saying they are residing in the region from thousands of years. They are protecting this their forest from the years. They are dependent on the forest for their livelihood, and they have a huge dependency on the forest. Now, as a result, what happened? There was a huge uprising against the British government by the forest dwellers. So this continuous rise you can see. Now, what has happened when India got independence in 1947? These forest dwellers or tribal leaders thought that in the independent era or in the independent India, they will get their right. Of course, the a lot of the philosophical things were introduced, but no major change occurred in their life, and the state continuously. Now, what the British government used to do, and at least in the eye of the forest dwellers or the tribal leaders, the same thing used to be done by the government, and that is known as a state. So state were doing the same kind of thing against the tribal leaders. So therefore it was felt that the tribals rights are not protected. So there was a lot of demand from the people across the sections that we need to protect the rights of the tribals because they have their rights. It is their land. They have protected for over the years, and they have a huge dependency on the forest when it comes to livelihood, when it comes to the custom, culture, and traditions. All these things, the tribals have a correlation with and tribals have dependency on the forest. So both the forest, okay, for existence of the forest, the tribals are required because tribals help in maintaining the forest. And at the same time, the forest is essential for the tribal's life, livelihood, customs, and so many things. So there is a huge dependency between these two. So in light of that, the government of India understood that there is a need to introduce extensive rights for them. There is a need to recognize their rights, and therefore the Forest Right Act was passed in 2006. This act gives or mentions about the rights of the forest dwellers. So it sought to restore the rights of forest dwellers over land, community forest resources, and habitats, and the governance and management of the forest. Now, in the governance and management of the forest, the act is talking about the community, that the community will have a right over the governance of the forest. It's not the what the earlier provisions state, that the community were not having any right on their on the governance of the forest. Now their recognition is done under the Forest Right Act. It concerns the rights of the forest dwelling communities to land and other resources, which was denied to them from the colonial era. Okay, so I talked about those act. Now the act grants legal recognition to the rights of traditional forest dwelling community. Now remember here, these traditional, the tribal leaders, they usually don't have any pattas. Okay, and the Forest Right Act, the earlier Forest Right Act during the British rule, and also it used to tell that if you have any right over the land, you need to have patta. But these tribals don't have any patta. They never manage this kind of manage their land, and they never there was no administration of land, and this is the reason they could not maintain it. And in such situation, their rights were not protected over the land. Now this Forest Right Act tries to correct those injustice. Okay, and it tries to ensure that the people get that their rights over the land. And this is the reason, if you go to the tribal areas, you will see their land have been encroached, their land have been captured by other communities. And this is the reason why you see why there is a conflict between the forest community, or the tribal communities and other communities in some of the regions. Okay, this is one of the reason you can see why the nationalism is so much on rise in the country. Okay, so in light of that, the Forest Right Act aims to ensure that they have their right over the land. Now, what are the significance and various provisions? So the community forest titles enable all the villagers, landless people, to access, use, and sell minor forest produce. Okay, so minor forest produce, you see there are a lot of people, tribal people, who depend on the various forest produce, whether it is using the leaves, whether it is using the herbs, whether it is using using the woods for their their purposes. So therefore what it recognized, that the people, the tribal people, can have their rights over the minor forest produce and use other forest resources which are essential for their livelihood. Okay, they can sell it to the minor forest produce, they can collect, they can sell. You see, when they used to collect, when there was no right to them, in that case, once they go to the minor forest area, you see there was a lot of extortion, in fact, by the administration. There were a lot of corruption in the system, and they used to charge, the local administration used to charge money on those individuals. Okay, because they had no right. So now it has been given that if the communities are going, if their livelihood are dependent on the forest, if they are going to get their minor forest produce from that jungle, or from their forest, it is their right. The act has a potential to restore the rights of the forest dwellers, and especially over 100 million acres of the forest land. So that gives the recognition. It also grants recognition of community forest right. So for example, the household incomes from bamboo harvestings have increased, and in fact, this is this is again one of the right that they can get under the Forest Act. This is one positive thing, that the forest right has a potential to reverse or reverse migration. The reason being that the tribal people, they have been displaced from their village or from their forest. Now they don't have any other thing to continue their livelihood. So therefore, the people are migrating to the other parts of the country. Now, one thing that you need to understand, since they are lacking the skills, since they are not culturally culturally linked to or culturally exposed to those urban areas, they face multiple challenges, not only in terms of incomes but also in terms of cultural level and at various levels. So therefore, uh, if the Forest Right Act ensures their livelihood, in that case the migration will not be required, and in fact it will help them to uh, earn money at their own areas. And at the same time, it will also ensure the sustainable management and development of forests. Why? Because in order to protect the forest, it is essential to protect them. Someone should be there should be a close vigilance of that, because there is a nexus between the administration or the forest administration and with encroachers. Okay, there can be, and this is the reason why the forest, these resources are being drained in the market. So therefore, if we ensure that there is a sustainable management of resources happens in the forest, in that case there must be community must have their right over the land, community must have a vigilance over the land. Okay, only then there will be possibility to maintain and continuous growth of the forest. So there is interdependence between these, and if you maintain that interdependencies, you will see that both will get flourished. And if we break that interdependency between those, both will hampered in the process. Okay, and the objective of sustainable development will never be we will never be able to achieve in that circumstances. Now, the implementation status of the FRA. If you look at the implementation status of FRA, the Supreme Court, no, Supreme Court ordered the eviction of scheduled tribes and other traditional forest dwellers across 16 states. Okay, so it was ordered by the Supreme Court, but then the court directed that the eviction be carried out by July 2019. So it was ordered by July 2019 that the eviction must be carried out. Okay, one who has no claim over the forest dwellers. So there are many people who have claimed over the land, but their claim have been rejected under the Forest Right Act. So under this, the Supreme Court stated that there is need to be evicted these people from those reasons, so that the forest and both the communities are get protected. Okay. Now, forest land claims of these tribes and forest dwellers are mostly rejected by the state. Now, being poor and illiterate, these people are basically, they are continuously filing the claims, and they see the rejection. Now, remember here one thing, that as I said earlier, most of the people don't have their pattas. Most of the people don't have their rights over the land. Okay, and the record over the land, and in the absence of their in the absence of record over their land, their claims are rejected by the state. Now, it has been stated by the Supreme Court after the center moved the apex court to modify the former order. Okay, so current status, if you look at that, even those Supreme Court gave it order in 2019, but now it has been stayed, and therefore this is how it is going on. Now, if you look at the implementation of Forest Right Act, implementation of Forest Right Act is done by the Ministry of Tribal Affairs, and it has a jurisdiction over this one. It grants all the resources to them. And as of now, if you look at the status which is talking about, so Ministry of Tribal Affairs had received 42,50,602 claims, whether it is individual or community claims, and titles were distributed to 46% of the applicants so far. So this is the status of the implementation of the claims over the over the land in the forest area. So this is so far only 56% of the people have got their title. Now, what are the challenges? If you look at the challenges of Forest Right Act, there are many challenges. And the challenges, especially if you look at, you will find those challenges in the context of the administration. For example, non-compliance of the procedure. So if you look at the constitution of the forest right, okay, there is a need for the constitution of Forest Right Committee, which comprises the member of Gram Sabha, because the Gram Sabha, Gram Sabha has some sort of understanding whether whether if an individual is claiming right over the land, it is the Gram Sabha which knows about it, which will have the information about it. Okay, so there is a problem when it comes to the constitution of the Forest Right Committee, that has been not followed so far in true spirit. And also these committees are constituted by the panchayat secretaries upon the directive received by the district magistrate at short notice. That is one problem. The second is lack of transparency. For example, nomination of members in the district level or taluka level committees, there is a lack of transparency. And many times the members who are representing the community do not get voice, and as a result, the titles are not given in favor of these people. Another important concern is about the women's right. When it comes to the FRA, it provides equal rights in title issued under the Act for women. But if you look at the ground level, there are problems, and these are the problems that can be visible. Okay, so the land is, the titles are mostly granted in the name of male member of the society, and as a result, the women's rights are not protected. Another sort of problems, the proof of evidence. As I said, that the proof of evidence is required, but that is not possible for these people. Issues in confirmation of the award, especially if you look at some of the villages around Bastar. So the plots, those were claimed, and the documents that are not conforming. It means there is something, you can understand that there are many communities also getting the benefit of it. Okay, there are many people who don't have, who don't have their right, but then they have the documents, so therefore that is the challenge. Especially such situation has occurred in the last 125 years. Once the Forest Right Act, once the state entered into the forest, the rights over the resources, it was the state who had a right over the resources, and as a result, the communities get ousted from that resources, and its impact can be seen in the form of that the many other communities entered into that zone. They claim the land largely because, you know, once we introduced the money concept and various other concepts, what happened that these tribals had no money. So when they need money, they approached to, because they needed to pay the amount to as a tax. So they needed money, they needed currency. They used to approach to the land jamindars. They used to approach to the sahukars and so on. So these sahukars used to they used to collect the the land titles, and this is what you can see that over the year it has been converted in a way that they were ousted from their land, and land pattas are in the hand of those people, those outsiders. Okay, and this is the reason you see there is a difference when it comes to the claiming the plots, but the uh, actual honor of the land. So there is a difference in that. So this is the reason you can see, and this is the kind of situation you can see normally in every tribal areas of this country. Another thing is that non-expansion of other welfare schemes. So under the Forest Right Act, it was ensured that the welfare schemes will be extended to these tribal people, because Rural Development Ministry are already having a lot of welfare and development schemes. So that these were required to be extended, but it has not happened successfully so far. And at the end, last not the least, but the poor awareness about the schemes. Not all people are aware. Now remember one thing, that when it comes to dealing with the tribal communities, it is extremely difficult to communicate the way state wants to communicate, in the sense the central government or state government wants to communicate. The government has a different version, and the government has a different concept. In order to bridge that communication gap, we need to pick up the leaders from those regions, so that the communication can be smooth. But so far it has not been happened. There is a one approach, especially the administration, and that's where the administration and governance fails to recognize that there is a top down approach of communication. And this has happened in this case also. Despite having a tribal ministry at the center, we don't see the approach or the communication, a two-way communication approach, or the unorthodox communication approach. And this is the reason why there is not so much awareness about the tribal rights in the tribal areas. So this is something you can see the challenges. Apart from that, there is a declining in the quality of forest produce, largely because of infertile land. Infertility is increasing continuously because of lack of forest, dwindling forests, and deforestation for various activities, or for there is a huge a huge amount of you know ex, uh, corruption that you can see. And as a result, you can see even the quality of forest has also decreased in the last few years. Apart from that, these trees or the forest used to be protected when the people used to reside in those regions. Now they have been ousted, since they don't have right. In that case, what has happened, the dependency is broken. As a result, a lot of people are coming to that. They are engaged in diverting the resources from there. That is one. The second is that there's no one to nurture those forests, and as a result, the quality of forest produce has also gone down. That is one of the important challenge. Apart from that, you can see there is a lack of coordination, and there is a one such myth about the disappearance of tigers. This is something the kind of correlation people are trying to establish. So that is something, again, we can understand. It's a kind of it's again kind of you can see that it's a kind of conspiracy that has been hatched. Okay, so that is something which is again an implementational challenge when it comes to the Forest Right Act. Now, in those circumstances, what are the things that we need to do? Because the Forest Right Act has, of course, it has improved. It has improved the status when it comes to the allotment or entitlement. At least 46% of the people have got entitlement. So this is a right sign. Of course, it is showing that we are moving towards a right direction, but then it has a huge challenges as well. And the huge challenges need to be addressed in order to ensure the social justice of the tribal people in the country and protected their interest, customs, and traditions in the country. So what could be the way forward in such circumstances? What should we do in order to enhance their concern, in order to enhance or in order to protect their interest? Okay, and at the same time protecting the forest as well. So the one thing is that the involvement of NGO is required, not only to bridge the gap between the government and the tribal people, but also to educate the tribal people about their right, to communicate about their right, and making them aware that what is their right under the Forest Right Act. Because if there is no education and if there is a no better communication, there can be a situation when other people can take the benefit of it, and the community can be uh, can be diverted in that circumstances. Okay, the livelihoods of the local people needs to be improved, and for that there is a need to promote. One is horticulture, of course. One is the bamboo and aloe vera plantation that is required. It will hugely help in improving the income of the people. Apart from that, the silviculture and other practices must be enhanced so that the income and earning of the people increases and the tribal people gets increased. And at the same time, the forest is also protected. Medical and ecotourism along must be promoted. And in fact, the forest tourism has been on the rise in the country. Ecotourism has been the rise in the country, especially in the context of the climate change. And that has been widely used by the various states. For example, in the Western Ghats, you can see the ecotourism has been widely promoted by the Kerala government. So therefore, in order to ensure that such forest gives return to the government, community gets the due benefit for protecting these forests for the years, we need to go for medical and ecotourism in this region, and promotion is required. Provision of skill-based education to ensure the jobs, a need to push for every possible aspect of socioeconomic life by implementing the programs in letter and spirit, and critically important for the state machinery to create a favorable situation or favorable circumstances for the Gram Sabha to exercise their rights. Sometimes it is again the colonial mindset you can see, but that we need to move away from this colonial mindset. Ministry of Tribal Affairs needs to enhance their database, and they need to induct more people in the administration of the tribal affairs so that the sensitivities to the cause of tribal people remains, and they become the part of the decision making. And when the decision making happens, those sensitivity or the causes come into play while making the decision at the higher level. So this is what it is required when it comes to dealing with the forest right. So this is an important aspect. This is important aspect of social issues. Okay, in the paper one, you can surely expect, because one of the issues when it comes to the social issue, uh, social issues are there. So this is one aspect. The question can be asked in paper 3 also. So it is important for both paper 1 and paper 3. And forest right is a very important act. A lot of question has been asked from this part, and you can surely expect a kind of question from this one. Since this is a 15 years of implementation, so a question can be expected from this part in this year's mains exams. Any question? Any question with respect to the discussion? Okay, now if you don't have any question, let us move on to the next topic. But before eSRAM portal, I'll go to discuss some. Okay, let us discuss about this one, and we will discuss about some. Okay, so earlier this year in the budget 2000, in the budget 2021-22, finance minister made announcement that a bad bank will be created to resolve the NPA, that is non-performing asset issues in the banking sector. This was the announcement that was made. Now, there was news that, and there is such institution, there is already existence of asset reconstruction company in the economy. These asset reconstruction companies are also engaged in recovering the money under the non-performing asset. Okay, these are created under the SARFAESI Act. So Government of India has already brought the asset reconstruction company under the SARFAESI Act in 1992-3. All right. So now the question is being raised that if the bad bank comes into existence, then what will happen with the asset reconstruction company? See, these companies are promoted widely by the private sector, and the bad bank is being promoted by the government. Okay, so in that circumstances, the question is being raised about the level playing field between the ARC and the bad bank. Now, the question is being raised by the experts that if the government is creating the bad bank, it will favor the bad bank, and once it favors the bad bank, in that circumstances, how the asset reconstruction company will perform in the market. So there is a need to strike a balance. There is a need to provide a level playing field for asset reconstruction company. Now, as per the provision of or announcement made by the budget 2020-21-22, so the government has already created the bad bank. So this controversy has come up. Now let us try to understand that where the problem is, what are the differences, and so many things related to the asset reconstruction company and the bad bank. Okay, how they will work, what are the challenges, what are the issues with this. So as I said, that the National Bad Bank have been set up to clean the balance sheet of the banks. This has been done, and this is what it had challenged. Okay, the reconstruction companies, asset reconstruction companies, which has been set up in 2002 under the SARFAESI Act. Now, this has created a jurisdictional conflict between the two agencies, where the asset reconstruction company will work, what are the differences, and where the bad bank will work. Okay, so that is the jurisdictional issue that has come up with asset reconstruction company and the bad bank. Now, in light of that, let us try to understand the asset reconstruction company. We'll also understand the bad bank, and then we'll try to move on where the difficulty is. Now, the asset reconstruction company, this asset reconstruction company is a financial institution. These are a special financial institution. Now, what this financial institution does? Now, let's say there is a bank. There is a bank, and the bank has a given loan to someone. There is a let's say bank SBI. SBI has a given loan to A. 10 lakh rupees loan has been sanctioned by A. Now, A has, of course, put some securities against it. Okay, it has put, let's say, something, whether it is house or something, worth of, let's say, 12 lakh worth of something asset. It is deposited with RBI, and against these mortgage securities, the SBI has given 10 lakh rupees to A. Now, A is supposed to make payment to SBI. Okay, there are two parts of the payment. One is a principal amount, and the second is interest. One is principal amount, the second is interest. If for a consecutive period of 90 days, if A is not able to provide either interest or principal amount to SBI, then it is converted into non-performing assets. Okay, so any loan which is not given back to, whether the principal amount or interest, which is not given back to the SBI within 90 days or for a consecutive period of 90 days, in that case, it becomes non-performing assets. Now, the non-performing asset has a various categories. There are substandard assets, there are loss assets, there are many categories for this one. Okay, so it is divided on the basis of length of the NPAs, for how many days it has remained NPAs. So substandard, loss asset, bad assets, and so many. It has been defined. Now, once it has converted into NPAs and SBI feels that there is A is not going to make any payment in future, in that case, SBI will give this asset. This asset, it will sell its asset to asset reconstruction company, and the asset reconstruction company will sell this in the market. This asset will be sold in the open market. Open market, and whatever the money is recovered, okay, so money will be given back to SBI, and for that the ARC, asset reconstruction company, will charge its a fee. So there will be fee for that. Okay, so that is how the asset reconstruction company works. Now, so it buys the debtors of the bank at a mutually agreed values and recover the debts. Okay. Now here there can be multiple models. One can be the ARC returns the whatever amount it gets, and the other model can be that ARC buys that asset at a price at a discount rate. So let's say the price of this asset is 12 lakh. In that case, let's say ARC is willing to buy at 10 lakh rupees. And if it is sold at a 12 lakh rupees, there is a difference of 2 lakh rupees, and that would be the earning of ARC. All right. So this is what the ARC does. Now, the similar function is done by the bad bank as well. Okay. But before that, let us try to understand how the asset reconstruction company works and what are the various provisions of asset reconstruction company. Now, asset reconstruction companies are registered under the RBI. This is a critical information. Okay, this is a very important function, that asset reconstruction companies are registered under the RBIs and regulated under the SARFAESI Act 2002, that is Securitization and Reconstruction of the Financial Assets and Enforcement of Securities Interest Act 2002. So they have been created under the ARC, and therefore it is regulated under the SARFAESI Act. So it takes portion of the debt of the bank that qualified to be recognized as non-performing assets, as I have already told. They charge the management fee. They are also permitted to sell that security in the secondary market. Okay, they can sell these securities to if there is a company. Okay, so here in this case I am talking about the individuals. So let's say there is a company, and the asset reconstruction company can sell these companies as well in the secondary market. All right, in the share market especially. It is the right is given under the asset reconstruction company as well. But if you look at the performance of ARC, and that is where the challenge is, that so far the performance of asset reconstruction company is not praiseworthy, is not sufficient, and this is the reason why the government needs to create or needed to create bad bank, because they were not performing well. If you look at its performance, that the investors were able to recover only 14.2.9% of the amount owed by the borrowers during the period 2003-4 to 2012-13. So that is the data suggesting that only 14.29%. Okay, and this is the reason why we face the NPA crisis in the country. If such situation might have occurred, if the asset reconstruction company were working properly, in that case the situation might not have occurred, and even if it occurred, it could have resolved earlier as well. But this asset reconstruction company failed to perform, and this is the reason why we do have we have carried the huge NPAs in the banking system, which has not only affected the growth of the banking system in the last decade, as well as the growth of the economy in the last decade. So that is where you can see the problems. And there are also sometimes because there is a kind of nexus between the asset reconstruction company and the companies, okay, who are supposed to be liquidated. So that is the challenge, and this is the reason, since there is a lot of private participation here. So in that case, there is a need to have a government. The government needs to have strategic presence in most of the areas of the country, okay, whether it is a defense, banking, or anywhere. Government needs to have strategic presence. In the absence of government's presence, the private players will enter into nexus. There can be no checkmate to the private sector, and that's where the problem start occurring. So in light of that, the bad banks were created. Bad bank is like a asset reconstruction company or asset management company. The same thing it does, which we have already seen. So it will take over the assets from the various banks. So there are many there are many PSBs, the public sector banks. So they have NPAs. So these bad banks will borrow or will buy these NPAs from them, and then the bad bank will be specialization or will have a specialization in recovery. Okay, that recovery, whether they that is done through insolvency and bankruptcy code or by resolution plan. Okay, so whatever it is, whatever the way, so that is that the bad banks will do. So it is basically created in order to ensure the recovery of the loans. Okay, it doesn't provide any lending and taking deposits. So it is not, it is specialized in one, recovery of the loan. So there is the with the names. Okay, though the name is suggesting bad banks, so remember that bad bank is not going to, the contrary to the general or traditional definition of the bank is to provide lending and taking deposit. This is not the bad bank is doing. So bad bank will be specialized in recovery of the loans. So it will help the commercial banks to clean up their balance sheet. And here in this case, the takeover of the bad loans is normally below the book value. Okay, so let's say there is a let's say there is a NPA, one NPA of the Punjab National Bank worth of 10,000 crore rupees. So the bad bank will be willing to purchase this 10,000 crore rupees loan at a lesser price. Let's say it is willing to purchase it as at let's say 7,000 crore rupees. All right, and out of 7,000 crore rupees, again the bad bank will be immediately paying the 15% amount. Okay, rest 85% amount will be paid once the recovery is done by the bad bank. Okay, so out of 7,000 rupees, only 15% rupees will be given, 15% money will be given to the bank on immediate basis. Rest 85% money will be given at once the recovery is done by the bad bank. Okay, so that is what the provision is made under this one. Now the bad bank, it is promoted by the government, and the government is infusing money in this, and the government will provide for government will provide a resolution period for 5 years. So here it is the government which is giving guarantee for the bad banks. It is supporting for the creation of the bad banks. Now what are the differences between the bad bank and the bad bank that is National Asset Reconstruction Company Limited? Okay, so this is a bad bank. We have created bad bank, two layers of bad bank, NARCL and IDRCL. So what are the differences between NARCL and ARC, or bad bank and asset reconstruction company? The first is about the government's backup. Okay, NARCL is a public sector company, so it has a public government backup, whereas asset reconstruction companies are essentially a private companies. Okay, that is the one difference that you can see. So it will have a government backup. So NARCL will have a government backup. The second is about the valuation. So individual banks to have to sell their stressed assets to ARC, and this process gets stuck because ARC typically seek a steep discount. As I said, they need to, let's say the loan NPA is worth of 10,000, they need steep discount, because the why the asset reconstruction company will buy some loan at a 10,000 crore rupees. Okay, because it is already a non-performing asset and recovery is not easy. So therefore, asset reconstruction, it is the asset reconstruction company which is taking uh, which in fact, if you look at that entire burden of the banks is shifted to the asset reconstruction company. So they are taking all the risk, and therefore they will take the risk for nothing. So the private sector will not take risk without profit. So therefore they are taking the risk, they need the profit also. So let's say there is a 10,000 rupees, they know they will not be able to recover it. So let's say they expect that they will able to recover it 7,000 rupees, but then they will say I will be able to buy it at a 3.5 thousand crore rupees, and if they get the recovery of 7,000, the rest 3.5 will be the benefit of the asset reconstruction. So this is a private company because they want the profit. So therefore, they are looking for what steep discount in NPAs, whereas NARCL being the government initiative, the valuation can be higher when it comes to when it comes to NARCL. In that case, the NARCL will be able to buy all the loans and majority of the loans from the market, because there is a government backup. There is a they will increase the valuation in the sense and what will it be its impact, that asset reconstruction company will be outplaced in the market. Another thing you can see, the big accounts. So smaller ARCs do not have the ability, they don't have enough cash, whereas the NARCL will have a deep pockets because of the government support, negotiation of deals, largely because dealing with the multiple lenders, and of course the government setup, relaxation of rules. There is a RBI might extend, there is a fear that since it is a government initiative, so therefore and the resolution is required at this point of time, so therefore NARCL will get support from RBI, because they might extend certain rules in order to ensure that the NARCL get the get get all the business. So here, that is what the fear between NARCL and ARCs, that there will not be a level playing field for ARCs, and the NARCL being a government agency will be able to get majority of the projects. What is required? So in this case, there is a need to setting up alternative investment fund, because alternative investment fund will greatly help to bring in more capital and competencies for reconstruction as well. So this must be, the ARCs should be allowed to set up alternate investment funds, so that will help them to get the capital from the various investors. There is a need to provide them level playing field between the private ARCs and ARCL. I'm continuously talking about. So if you look at currently, the bad banks will require to make payment of 15%, whereas 80% they can, 85% they can give it at a later point of time when the recovery is done. But when it comes to the private ARCs, they are they're allowed to bids. Okay, so through bids they can do so. So let's say somebody is bidding for 40%, somebody is bidding for 50%. So highest bidder gets, highest bidder which is providing the cash, immediately they get the value. So that is where the concern is, that it may affect the business of ARCs. there will be huge competition when it comes to the NPAs, and NARCL will be in a position to buy these NPAs. When it comes to the, so there is a need to ensure that there is a competition happens between the private sector and the public sector at this level. When it comes to the optimal recovery and revival, see, remember, optimal recovery is possible when there is a competition between the private sector and public sector. There is a fear also among the bad banks, among the expert, that the bad banks might turn uh, uh, into an instrument to protect the interest of the interest of the borrower as well, because there can be fear of you know there can be and there are accusation regarding the nexus between that NARCL and the borrowers. So in that case, it might affect the market. So therefore, what is required, that if the market, there are other players in the market as well. So this will ensure better competitiveness among the players, and that will greatly help in improving the recovery in in the banking. So therefore, we must focus on bringing more competition into the system. There should be market determined price for recovery and revivals. This so this is what it is expected. So when it comes to the asset reconstruction company and NARCL or bad banks, there are some differences, but it is required that there is competition, or there is a level playing field provided to both. Okay, because if you look at the performance of industry over the last 30 years, that has increased. We see more number of companies, largely because the competition was inserted, competition introduced in the economy because of the liberalization, privatization, and globalization. So the efforts should be made to ensure that more space for the private sector as well as the space for the public sector as well to compete fairly in the market, in order to get the optimal recovery, or in order to get the higher efficiency into the system, right? So this is what we have understood. Now, any question with regard to this particular discussion? Any part of the discussion, if you're not able to understand, please raise your cursor. Okay, so now we will move on to the next question. Again, this is a very important topic. Okay, so what I'll do in the in of course, I will take one session, and in the session I'll completely talking about the labor. Okay, about the labor situation and labor conflict and labor issues, and then we'll talk about the bills that have been introduced by the government. So I'll talk about it, but today, since this has come into discussion, so we'll talk about the code on wages bill. So this is one aspect of the labor reform. This is merely one aspect of labor reform. There are multiple reforms have been introduced by the government, and liberalization of labor market has been continuously done by the government. So we'll discuss about all those issues, but today we will restrict our discussion to only the code on wages bill 2019. All right, so but before that, let us take a small break, and then we'll discuss about the rest of the issues. Okay, so it's 9:40, it's a 7:42. We'll meet at 7:52 to discuss the rest of the issues. Is it all right to everyone? Okay, let's take a small break. Welcome back to everyone. So we are discussing about the Code on Wages Bill. Now this bill has been introduced and this bill has been passed by the Parliament recently. So let us look at the key provisions of the bill. Now, if you look at the government is making a lot of effort in order to address the supply side of the economy. A continuous reforms you can see from 2014 on supply side of the economy. As part of the supply side of the economy, in order to strengthen the production in the economy, a lot of emphasis has been made by the government regarding improvement or liberalization of the factors of production. We have seen the various efforts of the government of India to bring improvement in the land, whether it is land policies, land acquisition policies, land resources, and so on. The government has made several provisions with respect to the labor reform, labor efficiency. We have already seen Skill India. Government launched Skill India in order to strengthen the supply side of the economy, so that the total production cost gets reduced in the economy and Make in India becomes successful in this case. Government has also made several provisions in order to ensure that capital is improved. Similarly, the government has made several provisions with respect to the entrepreneurship. You can already you know government started Startup India, and so many things have ensured that this entrepreneurship gets promoted in the country. Now, as part of this process, the government has focused the reform in labor. The one thing is to inform or enhance the labor productivity, is to enhance the skills of the individuals or efficiency. In order to increase the efficiency, we need to increase the skill. So therefore, the government of India has gone for a Skill India mission. You know about it. And various kinds of skill training programs being organized by the government and other agencies in consultation with the government. Now, other aspect is that the labor market in India. There are a lot of issues when it comes to the labor market in India, and demand has been made by the various people in the market. So it was suggested that if we want to promote, if we want to ensure that more investment is done in the country, more production happens in the country, then we also need to remove the rigidities in the labor market. We have ensured the participation of the producers in the market. We have liberalized that market. We have also liberalized that entry of the capital in the market through lesser and lesser restrictions on the movement of capital. We have done that. So therefore, there is a one rigidity still exists in India, and that rigidities you can see in the labor market. In the labor market, there are a lot of laws in India. It is the labor laws in India, which protects the labor in the country. Okay, there are various labor laws which protects the labor in the country. Then that is one aspect of the labor reform, that it should not be purely labor oriented, but that should be a neutral, where the people must have, the industry must have some space as well. So they want that the supply and demand of the labor must be based on the market forces. Okay, and therefore the wages must be decided on the market forces. and so many things related. The another aspect of this is that there are huge informal labor exist in the country, and there are informalization of the labor market. We need to bring reform in order to ensure, or in order to strengthen the in formalization, in the sense that the labor gets due security or due covered. Okay, they must have social protection, social security schemes. They are covered with social security schemes, so that their their risk can be minimized. So multiple challenges we can see in the labor market, whether it is about the labor rigidity in labor laws, whether it is controlling the demand and supply of the labor by the market, where it is the laws, where it is the laws being favoring the laborers, not giving enough space to the private, and informalization of it. There are multiple challenges in this one. Now, under the labor reform, the government has introduced various reforms. In this process, the government has introduced one bill that is known as Code on Wages Bill, which ensures that the wages of the individual or wages of the laborers are fair enough in the market. What should be the condition of wages? What are the other factors associated with this? We will discuss it in this article. Okay. Now, as I said, the Code on Wages Bill 2019, it has been passed by the Parliament. It seeks to consolidate and simplify the four pieces of legislation. Okay, so four pieces of legislation has been codified. So you can see there are a lot of effort being by the various labor laws. So broadly, it has been codified into four broad labor laws. So one part of it is the Code on Wages Bill. So in the Code on Wages Bill, it comprises, or it subsumes the legislation such as Payment of Wages Act 1936, Minimum Wages Act 1948, Payment of Bonus Act 1965, and Equal Remuneration Act 1976. Now, let me tell you, this is an important fact for both mains and prelims examination. And for prelims examination, this is important, extremely important point. Okay. So the Code on Wages Bill subsumes the Payment of Wages Act 1936, Minimum Wages Act 1948, Payment of Bonus Act 1965, and Equal Remuneration Act 1976. This Code on Wages Bill has been it is based on the recommendation of Second National Commission on Labor 2002. Okay. Now, what are the key features of the bill? The key features of the bill is based first about the coverage. Now, the coverage is that it will apply to all the employees, whether it is in the government sector or the private sector. It applies to everyone. And when it comes to deciding, because Code on Wages Bill, so wages here has been defined under the bill itself. So under the bill, the wages include the salary, allowances, or any other component expressed in monetary terms, but it excludes, very important point here, it excludes the bonus. So wages include the salary, allowances, and any other component except bonus. Okay, bonus, travel allowances, among others. So coverage, it has a huge coverage. So it covers all the employees in the country, and it defines the wages. So the bill defines the wages, what the defines mean, or what the wages means. Again, this is a very important fact. Second, fixing the minimum wage. The act fixes the minimum wage. It prohibits employers from paying wages less than what is mentioned in the minimum wages. So it fixes the minimum wage. There is a floor wage that central government will fix, and it will be notified. And the floor wage will of course be dependent on the living standard of workers. Okay, and it may set differently for geographical regions. So in different geographical areas, the floor wage will be different. Okay, and there is a feature that if somebody is working additionally, in that case there will be there in excess of normal working days. If somebody is working, in that case there will he she will be entitled to get the overtime wage, and which the overtime wage must be at least twice of the normal rate of wages. So overtime is clearly defined, and the rate of overtime, the rate of overtime is also mentioned. Now the key feature is about the implementation, whether the government will how the government will be able to do, whether the labor has that kind of negotiation or negotiable element of power. That is something which is important. Okay, now of course the bill has mentioned about it. Payment of wages, of course the payment must be paid in either coins, currency notes, check, crediting directly into the bank, or through electronic mode. That is also defined. The wage period will be fixed by the employer. So wage period must be daily, weekly, fortnightly, and monthly. So it differs from country to country. For example, in USA, there are weekly payment wage period. So in India, it can be defined by the employers, how they want to maintain. If they want to make payment on a daily basis, so that can be done. It can also be done on a weekly basis, fortnightly, or monthly. So that there is a provision regarding the payment of wages. Now there is an important concern, that deduction. Okay, so an employee's wage may be deducted on certain grounds. Okay, this is something which is a part of the conflict. Now there are certain grounds on which the deductions can be made, and such deduction can include the fines, absence from duty, accommodation given to the employer. So various kinds of accommodation. If house is given, then house there will be deduction for the houses. Okay, recovery of advances, given to the employee. So sometimes, so many organization gives advances to its employees. That is not, technically it is not called as loan, but a kind of loan facilities provided by the employer to its employee. That is also covered, this one. However, it mentions that these deductions should not exceed the 50% of the employee's total wage in a single month. For example, if the deduction is if the salary is 50,000, then the deduction should never be more than 25,000. Okay, it should always be lesser than 25,000. Otherwise, how the people will survive? So the deduction, the maximum deduction can be done up to 25,000. Determination of bonuses, so whose wages do not exceed a specific amount, which is mentioned by the central government. So a bonus, an employee can receive a maximum bonus of 20% of his annual wages. That is also done. One important aspect of this can be seen from the gender's perspective, that the gender discrimination in matters of wages have been done away with. It mentions, it restricts or it prohibits the gender discrimination in terms of wage of the men and women. There is advisory board. So in order to protect the interest of the women, there is an advisory board that will be created, and in this advisory board the significant presence to women will be given. In fact, it is mentioned that one third of the total member on both the central boards and state boards we will be the women. So women should given due presence in the boards. Offenses. So in such circumstances, the maximum penalty being imprisonment for 3 months along with a fine of up to 1 lakh rupees. So the code on wages bill covers the various aspects of the wages. It includes, it defines what is wage. It defines the minimum, floor wage, overtime, payment of wages, deduction, determination of bonus, gender discrimination in wages, and various. So it covers various aspects of wages in a company or in a setup. So this is a very significant development when it comes to determining the various wages of the people. Now, there are some criticism of the bill, and the one criticism is about the deduction. As I said to you, this is one of the significant and one of the most important criticism, because if the deduction happens, especially for the recovery or uh, interest, in that case it will have a huge implication. Okay, so deduction from wages will have a huge implication on the people, because it might cover many arbitrary things as well. Okay, for example, absence from duty. So once somebody is doing overtime, so the payment for overtime will be double, it is mentioned. But absence from duty, in the case of absence from duty, how much deduction will be done? That can be discretionary. Okay, it may not necessarily that it will be done for 1 day if it is 1 day absence. So what would be that? That is something which is required to be required to be very clear on this count. The one another thing is that the code has done away with the cap of not more than 2 months of workers' wages under the earlier act. Okay, so again, in case of advances, how much that the deduction will happen. Okay, in fact, the people are saying it legalized the charging of an interest rate. By mentioning the provision of interest rate, it in fact charging the interest rate. For example, if somebody has taken some loan facilities from the companies, they can charge the interest on that case. So that is again a problem. There can be, it can have disproportionate effect the on Dalits and the landless. It will further enhance or deepen the economic inequality to the privileged caste and to the lower caste in the country. In that case, it will severely affect the interest of the workers. The most important aspect is that, especially in an environment when when there is no right to the wage of workers at this point of time, in the sense they don't have a negotiation right. In fact, their negotiation uh, power has been dwindled in this pandemic. So in that circumstances, if such bill is passed, then it will have a blow on these people, because they don't have the enough power. So that is something which you can see will greatly affect the labor's interest. And this is the reason why the labor agencies are continuously demanding that adequate provision must be done to protect the interest of the laborers as well. All right, this is what is important. in the Code on Wages Bill. Remember, we will talk about the all the reforms that is done in the labor market, and as we have given the printout for, or blueprint for this. Now, this is a kind of development that you can expect to be asked in the mains examination. Okay. Now, this, since from the last 2 years, we can see the significant development when it comes to labor reform, and protecting the labor's interest is one of the important aspect of one of the important aspect of civil services. So therefore, you can expect one question from this part, code on, whether it is on it is specific question on code on wages bill, or of course there will be critical analysis of the code on wages bill. So you will always have to do the critical analysis. You need to understand the benefits. You also, at the same time, you need to understand what are the cons of these the reforms that have been introduced. Okay. Or the question can, general question can be asked about the labor reform or labor market reform. Any question can be expected. So as we have restricted our discussion to Code on Wages Bill 2019, so this is what we have discussed. All right. Any question with this, with respect to this particular discussion? No. Okay. Now let's move on to discuss the next topic. Okay, but before this one, we will understand some other issues. That is zero budget natural farming, because this has been a discussion, and in the last 2 weeks, I could not cover the zero budget natural farming, but there has been a lot of discussion regarding the zero budget natural farming, and something that you must know. Of course, from the exam point of view, agriculture is a important topic. So zero budget natural farming becomes automatically becomes an important issue for mains discussion, undoubtedly. But in general, also you need to know about the zero budget natural farming. What is zero budget natural farming? What are the essential component and pillars of the zero budget natural farming? What are the benefits? What are the efforts that government of India is making? And also whether it is possible to have zero budget natural farming in current scenario, whether such farming can be a viable option for the farmers. That is something that we need to understand. Okay. So in light of that, let us discuss about the zero budget natural farming. This is in discussion largely because of the fact that Prime Minister is going to highlight it at a national enclave in Gujarat. So a national enclave on zero budget natural farming has become the top of the government's agenda, and largely because the national conclave is being organized. Now, the government is also sanctioning support for converting 4 lakh additional hectares of cropland in 8 states to using zero budget natural farming technique this year. So it clearly shows that the government of India is continuously looking to enhance the scope of zero budget natural farming in the country, and it's a deep penetration in the country. So what is zero budget natural farming? So if you look at the zero budget natural farming, the concept of zero budget natural farming was founded by Maharashtra-based Subhas Palekar. Okay, it is also an offshoot of the Japanese idea of natural farming, and this concept has got recognition in recent times, largely because of the demand for natural farming products. Okay, now organic farming, there is a demand for organic farming products in across the world, and therefore it is considered that the product which is done by using the natural farming will have a huge viability in the market in terms of fetching the higher prices. All right. So in this light, the government of India is also thinking to promote zero budget natural farming. Now, what is zero budget natural farming? In simple, you can understand the it's a method of farming where the cost of growing and harvesting plants is zero. Okay, so input cost will be zero, in the sense the cost of in the cost, I'm saying not entire input cost, I'm saying essentially the cost of the items, not the labor is required. So it requires intensive labor. So zero budget natural farming in terms of the in terms of the commodities or raw material that is required, the cost of raw material will be zero. Okay, that is what it is asking about. This means that the farmers need not to purchase fertilizers and pesticides in order to ensure healthy growth of crops. So basically, they will be using the natural farming techniques that uses the biological pesticides rather than using the chemical pesticides, and which they have to buy it from the market. So they will use the natural resources what they have naturally. So for example, using the earthworms, which can easily transforms the raw materials into the fertilizer, natural fertilizer, which greatly enhances the productivity of the land in a particular region. So using the earthworms, cow dung, urine plants, human excreta, and other, these creates the biological fertilizers, and which helps in enhancing the which helps in enhancing the productivity. In fact, it is not something which has been found for the first time by Maharashtra, by that individual. It is being practiced in the rural part of the country, but it has been widely practiced by that particular and widely promoted by that individual. Okay, that's why it has been highlighted. So it protects the soil from degradation as well as enhances the quality. So this will greatly help the farmer to save their money on fertilizer, and at the same time the country will also get benefited in the sense that it especially the government will not have to unnecessarily drain the resources in terms of fertilizer subsidy. Okay, so that is something that will greatly benefit to the government also. In fact, it is one of the one of the important step of the government of India to rationalize the subsidy and reduce the burden of the subsidies in the country. Okay, so you can correlate it with that fact as well. Okay, now if you look at the zero budget natural farming, the zero budget natural farming has a four pillar, and these four pillars has been known as Ziv Amruta, Biz Amrita, Achadana, and Vapsa. So these are the four phases. In the figure images, you can see how it has been done. Achadana, Bizamrita, okay, so, and Jivamruta. So Jivamruta means what? Using the basically preparing the biofertilizer. Okay, so this biofertilizer will be used by mixture of fresh cow dung and aged cow urine, jaggery, pulse floor, water, and soil to be applied on the farmland. So basically, the fertilizer. Okay, so biofertilizer. Now, Bees Amrita, it is concoction of neem leaves and pulse, tobacco and green chilies prepared for insect and pest management. Okay, for insecticide and the pest management, the Bees Amrita, protecting the bees. Okay, the seeds is known as a Bees Amrita, and that can be protected by using the natural products such as tobacco, green chilies, and neem leaves. And important among them to understand that neem leaves has a huge impact on protecting, because they can greatly they can greatly protect the seeds from the insects. Okay. Achadana means mulching. It protects the topsoil during cultivation and does not destroy it by tilling. Okay. And the Vapasa, it is the condition where both air molecules and water molecules are present in the soil. Okay. So enhancing the water retention in the soil is the objective of Vapasa. So this will greatly reduce the irrigation requirement on land, and at the same time it will greatly the enhance the soil quality. Land degradation will not happen as a result of Vapsa. Okay, and therefore the land will not convert into the degraded land. All right. So this is the zero budget natural farming aims at protecting the aims at providing the fertilizer, aims at protecting the natural seeds, aims at protecting the soil, topsoil, which is the fertility comes into the topsoil, that is responsible for enhancing the productivity and protecting the soil in the country. So that is how the four factors are included under the zero budget natural farm. Now, this has a huge benefit on every aspects of the economy. First, it is beneficial for environment. Now, the chemical fertilizer does not only lead to the land degradation, but it also affects the water. So it creates water pollution in the region. Okay, you have already seen the problems or the side effects of the green revolution in terms of the water quality. So water quality, groundwater quality and also the land quality both degraded by using the fertilizer. So here, if the biofertilizer is being used, which will not going to affect the land. In fact, it will strengthen the land degradation will not happen. At the same time, there will be no water pollution in the system. So as a result, the ecosystem will be maintained. The second aspect is about the cost of the farms. So it reduces the significant cost of the farmers on fertilizer, seeds and land management system. Okay. At the same time, it will also reduces the cost or fertilizer subsidy cost of the government of India. So its coffer also gets some sort of saving. Okay. So that is another benefit of the zero budget natural farming. uh, at the same time, the fertility and the nutrient value of the soil also gets used by using the cow dung from the local cows. And at the same time, you will see one who is engaged in it will also help in animal husbandry, because there will be huge demand for the cow dung in such circumstances. So animal husbandry can also be can be promoted for this, because there is a monetization of the cow dung in this case. So that is again another benefit of it can be seen. As you can see, using the biofertilizers will greatly help in saving the water, because it requires less water for irrigation. In fact, it requires only 10% of the water that is required in the chemical farming. All right. It may improve the potential of crops to adapt to and be produced for evolving climatic conditions. So as per the climatic condition, the production can be enhanced under this one. So this is what the benefit of zero budget natural farming. You can see now the government of India, of course, trying to provide support for zero budget natural farming, and it has started supporting the zero budget natural farming since 2015-16. So in 2015-16, one of the scheme that was launched, that is known as Paramparagat Krishi Vikas Yojana. Under this Paramparagat Krishi Vikas Yojana, government emphasized on organic farming as well as the zero budget natural farming. It also providing support to the zero budget natural farming through Rashtriya Krishi Vikas Yojana. Okay. Further, the revised guidelines for Paramparagat Krishi Yojana has been issued during the year 2018. Under this one, the various organic models have been included. So there are many models. One model is natural farming. There is a Rishi farming, Vedic farming, cow farming, Homa farming, and one of the farming method technique was the zero budget natural farming. So under the revised guidelines of Paramparagat Krishi Vikas Yojana, in order to promote the organic farming, zero budget natural farming was considered as one of the organic farming models. Okay, and with this recognition, it has got huge boost. Under the Rashtriya Krishi Vikas Yojana, organic farming project components are considered by the respective state level sanctioning committee according to their priority. In fact, the government of India, which we started, the government of India has ensured that states will implement this policy and they will get enough support in order to promote the zero budget natural farming in the country. So this is what we have learned about the zero budget natural farming. This is again one of the important topic which we need to understand. One of the important topic on which the question can be expected. Okay, so this is the benefit that we need to understand about the zero budget natural farming. All right. So anybody has a doubt with respect to this discussion? Any doubt? All right. So this is what we have discussed. Okay. So these are the major topics that we have covered today. Now, next week we will cover the rest of the issues. So today we have covered the topics such as zero budget farming. We have also covered the topics such as the code on wages bill. These are very prominent issues, and these are mains. In fact, you can always expect question whether it is in prelims or mains examination from these topics. Okay, we have also talked about the bad banks and the new asset reconstruction companies. So level playing field. We also talk about the Forest Right Act. These are major issues. These are something which are required to be discussed in the which can be asked in mains examination, prelims examination as well. We've also talked about the state's performance in the state's performance in the last few years, and we have also understood that DICGC and also about the key provisions of the Deposit Insurance and Credit Corporation Amendment Bill 2020-21. All right. So these are the major topics. I am sure these are very important topics on which you can always see the questions. So with this, let us wrap up today's discussion. I hope everybody has got and has understood every bit of today's discussion. There are some topics that I have mentioned and I'm not going to discuss because these are the topics which you can read and go through this one. All right. So the broader things which we which we need to discuss, which we have discussed. And uh, in the next week, we'll cover the rest of the issues. Right? Thank you.